bit behind the city clock, so I think it's about 6 o'clock. So first of all, before we get, I want to let everyone know that these electronic council meetings are recorded. Your personal information, including your voice, name, opinions, any other personal information is recorded on these calls. And if you don't want that to happen, you should not participate. If you have any questions about that, you can talk to our Deputy Corporate Officer. When we come to public input, I will give everyone 2 minutes who wishes to speak, and then we'll go from there. But first, before we get started with our regular meeting, I'd like to ask Terry to speak on behalf of council for the tragedy involving his very dear friend. So Terry, please.
Thanks, Kathy. So it was exactly a week ago today that Rossland's Peter Hillis lost his life in a tragic and random accident. But in that short space of time, this town and his friends and family around the world, actually, from all over, have been wrapping their arms around Kamong and Simon and Toby. And so on behalf of City Council, I'd like to extend those condolences to the Hillis family and wish them our very best. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Terry. We are all traumatized by this event. All right, I'm going to move along to our public input period. So if you wish to speak during public input, please raise your hand and our administrator there will make you available as a speaker. I see Mike Hexmer's hand is up. Please talk to us, Mike.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, good. I'm not sure where the mute and unmute on this one is. So I don't know, did the letter that I'd sent last week, did it get included in the package?
Yeah, we got it. It was too late to actually be included in the agenda,
Oh, okay.
but it was circulated. It was circulated to council and staff saw it as well. Okay.
And I see that from looking, at kind of what the policy information is that you've kind of got what we were hoping for. With the adult ice time, the adjustment in the priorities is on kind of that policy, amendment proposal. Did you guys have any questions over the last? Want me to recap it or?
Hold on just a second. Your voice is breaking up a little bit, but I think what you just said, if I'm correct, you see that we've changed the priorities in the proposed policy, and you'd like to know if council has any questions on the submission that you made. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, let's just take a minute and take a look. I think we were all kind of thinking along the same lines there. So Janice has a question.
Hi, Mike. Do you know how many, you mentioned there were 2 teams that were trying to get into the Rossland Arena, get ice on the Rossland Arena. Do you have any estimation of how many Rossland players are on those 2 teams?
There's the 2 teams, the Lone Stars and the Ice Hawks is around 30 to 35 from the numbers that I've got. And we were also concerned with the Warriors, that the ice time I think they had, it didn't work with, there was a conflict, and there's I think another 10 to 15 Rossland players on that team as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. One of the things that was pointed out by our staff was that hopefully this next season, the delay time between bookings will get a little bit more normalized and not be 45, we'll be back to 15, which will help with scheduling as well. So we have that to look forward to, we hope. But at this point, we don't know. Council, any other questions for Mike? Okay. All right, Mike. Thank you very much. Thank you for taking the time to write the letter. You made some good points, and I'm hopeful that the revised policy will balance all the needs and work out better for everyone. So
thank you.
Okay. Do I have anyone else who would like to speak in our public input period? If you are a delegation, you will have your moment, and it isn't just yet. All right, I don't see any other hands, so I'm going to ask for a motion to adopt the agenda from council. mover, Chris, and a seconder, Janice. Any discussion or changes to the agenda? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay. Now we get into our first delegation, which is the Central Kootenai Invasive Species Society. And I'm hoping we have Lori Carr there from there. Yes, maybe it's Lori. Let's see who shows up. I see you're there. You can speak now.
Hi, there I am.
There you are. Hello, welcome.
Very sophisticated system you guys have set up here. It's really cool. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Let's make sure this is all working first. Great, everyone can see that? No? Oh, wait a minute, because I didn't press the button. What about now? Yes? Yes, great. Okay, well, thank you, Mayor and Council, for having CKIS here. And I'm just tell me if you can't hear me or something goes crazy. I'm Lori Carr, and I'm representing the Central Kootenai Invasive Species Society. And we're just going to give you a brief update on invasive species in the area and talk about some recommendations with regards to the official community plan, and it all rolls into the general recommendations for Rossland. So very briefly, Central Kootenai Invasive Species Society, or we're just going to say CKIS for short, was started in 2005. We're a nonprofit, and our mission is to protect ecosystems and communities by preventing and reducing the harmful impacts of invasive species. And this is like a ton of information in this presentation, so I am going to go rather quickly, and I apologize for that, but let's just try and cover all the bases. So what are invasive species? Well, first of all, they're not native. So they don't come from here. They come from another country, from maybe the East Coast, where they're in perfect tune with the ecosystem, but they get transferred here and they no longer are. So importantly, with non-native invasive species is that they cause harm. They're not just non-native. There's lots of naturalized non-native species that are not invasive. So they can cause ecological or social or economic harm. Some common traits with invasive species. Firstly, they are primarily and normally after that, once they've been introduced, they're dispersed by humans. So this is the problem and this is the solution. So we have lots of behavior change programs that target human behavior and human dispersal of invasive species. Second trait is that they exhibit exponential growth. And this is the same graph that you've been seeing with COVID. Before you know it, it just explodes. And this is a really important concept for invasive species. And you're going to see this exponential growth curve throughout the presentation. Thirdly, as I talked about, they cause harm. So to the environment, the economy, or health. And very importantly, it reduces biodiversity. It's one of the top threats to biodiversity globally. So it's an insidious problem, but it's a big one. There's 97 known invasive species in our region. That includes our one vertebrate, which is our lovely bullfrog, and 15 fish and a pile of plants. So let's talk about Rossland specifically. There's 4 plant species of particular concern, and those are knotweed, Scotch thistle, scentless chamomile, and wild chervil. There's lots of other species, but these are our top ones. On this inventory map, we've never done an inventory of the area, so these are just kind of random surveys that have been done for different reasons. But the key thing on this map is that the brown dots mean that the surveys were done pre-2018. So that is the majority of what we know about the Rossland area. It's out of date by a few years. So let's go back to this lovely exponential growth curve. This is how we look at how we strategize control and prevention of invasive species. So it starts with prevention, which is before the growth curve even happens. That's where we want to be. And then eradicate is if there's just a few species that pop up, we want to get rid of those as quickly as possible because that is the cheapest. Then we move into contain, which is now the species has spread And we're just trying to contain these usually to a certain area. And then we have strategic control, which means we do not control on the landscape. There's just too many of them. It costs way too much. We don't have the resources. But if we are trying to protect a certain natural area, we'll just remove all the invasive plants or species. And so that is strategic control. It's like on a place-based issue. So these are the species that I talked about. So Scotch thistle and scentless chamomile are in the eradicate category. So we do want to get rid of those within Rossland and throughout our region. And then in the contain category, we have knotweed and wild chervil. And let's just look at those a little bit closer, just to give you an idea of what we're actually doing here when it comes to plants. So wild chervil has a containment line. Part of the containment line is within Rossland. And that means that we're not going to do any control within that containment line because there's too many, but we are trying to stop it from spreading outside of that containment line. So there may or may not be wild chervil outside of that containment line. Again, the surveys are a few years old, so we don't know. But it spreads all the way up close to Warfield. Then knotweed, you may be very familiar with this species. It's very dramatic. I know Dirk is very familiar with this species. It's often called false bamboo. It's very hard to get rid of. It needs to be treated with herbicides. Rossland has a great program around this species already, but again, the surveys are all to be interesting to know how well that program is working. Oops, sorry, I have so many windows open here. Okay. So just a little bit of updates of what CCAS has been doing in the Rossland area. We did provide this knotweed brochure, landowner brochure that went out with the resident letter in conjunction with the noxious weed control bylaw that lists knotweed. So that has been very well received. We are working on Play, Clean, Go messaging at the new bike wash station that's being planned. We fielded 40 public contacts since 2018 a lot of it is about knotweed in Rossland. And then I attended one of the official community plan workshops and gave feedback on that. And a few things came up with that in that process. One is the importance of including language around invasive species in the official community plan, especially in regards to planning. So any type of building or development or trail building or landscaping, invasive species need, especially plants in the Rossland area, needs to be included in that planning stage. It's so much more efficient than to have to deal with it later, because any kind of soil disturbance will increase the likelihood of the establishment and spread of invasive plants. Second is the importance of prevention as a strategy, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit more. And opportunities for a strategic plan, whether it is by itself or whether it's rolled in with another strategic plan, or you have a standalone strategic plan, or it's included in other strategies such as the recreation master plan that I believe is going to go on, is underway. So that would be really important to include that in there. So this gives me great pleasure because I normally end my presentation with this slide. But because Rossland is ahead of most municipalities, I can start it with this, which is that prevention is cheapest. So Rossland has some control and has a great knotweed program, but what we do also want to focus on is prevention. And the reason for that is simply resources. It is the cheapest. Is prevention. It's so costly to treat invasive plants that and it's not the sexy thing is prevention. It's not as dramatic, yet that is, the most logical place to be. It is prevention. So we're going to go back and look at our exponential growth curve, and let's talk about what these strategic methods look like for a local government. So first, when we're dealing with prevention, we're talking about education, adopting best management practices, and incorporating invasive species language into policies, existing or new policies, and or making new policies like bylaws that are specific to invasive species. And a great way to do that is through a strategic plan. So we have, you probably are aware that we just completed one for Warfield. We did a strategic plan and we did a management plan and inventory for them. And we are currently working on a strategic plan for the regional district of Central Cooney. So once we've moved past prevention and the species are here, which they're going to come here anyways, we're looking at control, and to really do control well, the best thing is, of course, to start with an inventory so that we know what we are dealing with. Then from the inventory, we can create a management plan. And then it's really key that there is the infrastructure in terms of staff and contractors to actually roll out the management plan and to enforce any policies that have been created. So as we were talking about the bylaw to control specified noxious weeds that Rossland has, knotweed is the only species listed. It has a 50% cost share program. It has been great uptake from what I understand. That is the ideal when it comes to offering incentive for control from private residents. So that is fantastic. Of interest, and this is really cool, this just came out in February, Squamish has an invasive species management bylaw. And there's a couple of great things about going this route. And one is that it's not limited to plants, it's all species, so flora and fauna. So that's really important because, for example, insects will become more important as climate change happens and our trees and forests will be more and more threatened by insects and fungus. So this is really great. And it also focuses on prevention. And this is, as I was talking about, really key. So not only does it prevent all forms of spreading invasive species, sowing, planting, cultivating, releasing, the accumulation, basically covers it all, but it also prohibits the sale of invasive plants and animals. And this is the first bylaw I've seen that does that because we don't have provincial or federal legislation. Unfortunately, it's really lacking generally, and we don't have this anywhere in any other legislation. So this is key. And then it also includes a treatment and disposal section, and there's an additional document that comes with the bylaw that explains proper treatment and disposal. So in terms of recommendation, we recommend a focus on prevention that we talked about. Like a strategic plan is always a great idea if it can happen. Consider invasive species, expanding the current bylaw to include invasive species management, and to also continue with the great management efforts that Rossland has done. We do recommend inventory. We are doing one for the City of Nelson this summer, and then a management plan to guide management efforts. One place that people have found is helpful is to start off with this white paper that was included in your handout and to go through these questions. It just helps you establish where you are, where you can be, and we've done this with staff before. If that's helpful, we're totally willing to aid with that. And let's just see how much time I have before I talk about anything else. I think I have 15 minutes. These are just some examples of things we've done for municipalities. One is the knotweed signage for the knotweed that's being treated in the City of Nelson. We get a lot of calls from that sign. A lot of public education has worked really well. We created this door hanger for the City of Castlegar for their bylaw enforcement officer, just to hand out. So they're going to be rolling that out this season. And then another project that I just wanted to make you aware of is our Eco Garden project. It's to promote the use of non-invasive plants in gardening and landscaping. With regards to municipalities, that means, you know, just general landscaping and also for fire smart mitigation. And there are a couple invasive plants on the fire smart list, so we're going to be working on that as well. But it's to provide a resource for people to be able to use native plants as well as non-invasive cultivated plants in their landscaping, because we're trying to protect our native ecosystems. That is our mission. So this rolls into it because the horticultural industry is probably the largest vector for invasive plants. So those are just some fun projects I wanted to make you aware of. And thanks you for listening to us, and thank you to our sponsors, especially Columbia Basin Trust. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to receive them.
Thanks, Lori. That was very very informative, and I do want to point out, and maybe you've seen this, but we do have a point in our strategic plan that does address invasives. It could maybe be more specific, but it's 6.3, and it says encourage natural green space and incorporate invasive species considerations in all planning decisions. So hopefully we're on the right track with that. I'd like to open it up to council and see if any councilors have questions for you. I can't quite see everybody. Let me see if I move my screen here. There we go. Okay, council, does anybody have any questions? Dirk.
Soil transportation or soil distribution is a worrying problem. So I don't know if there are templates. I know we have, probably disappointingly to you guys, more scentless chamomile than first anticipated.
Mm.
So not just 1 or 2 places anymore. There's quite a bit. I think it's moving with some soil.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't have a template for soil. To find one of those, it would be best to join in on the Invasive Species Council working group, the local government group, because I know like Metro Vancouver, they've been creating a library of bylaws. So, I could introduce you to them to look for that. They would have that library going, but I haven't talked to them recently to see what the status on that is. But in that toolkit that's also in your handout, they talk about soil, and I don't think that anybody has actually put in a soil bylaws to date. But I don't know, it's actually really hard for me to get that information. So I could be totally wrong on that. But I think that is an area that needs to be worked on.
Terry.
Hey, Laurie, thanks for that. That was great. Hey, in what way is Squamish's policies different, better, or I'm sure how can we learn from what they've done, and what are the significant differences between what we've got now and what Squamish has in place?
Okay, so what you have now is a bylaw that focuses on noxious weeds. And then, I mean, it's great in that it doesn't restrict the weeds. It's on your own schedule. So you can list whatever you want on your bylaw, which is great. Because other ways of doing it is to take it off the Weed Control Act, and then you are restricted to their species, or you can do it off the community charter, which the Squamish bylaw does. So then you are restricted to the species that are listed under the community charter, which may or may not be the species of concern, because these things are always out of date, especially the Weed Control Act. And I don't know why they chose to do it that way. But it does list quite a lot on the, through the concurrent, don't ask me exactly how you say, but it's the community charter list. The main difference with the Squamish is that they also include all species, so fauna as well as plants or weeds. So it's super broad in case something pops up that you want to deal with. Like an insect, for example, like you don't have aquatic systems as much, so you're not dealing with zebra quagga mussels or things that are coming in through, like goldfish is a big problem in ponds. But there are insects and other animals that may be concerned in the future. And the other one is that they also include the prevention piece with the sale of invasive plants and animals.
Thanks. Chris.
Does that answer your question?
Hi, yeah, thank you. I look at the survey of 2018 and similar to our census and how our population is growing like crazy. When's the next survey going to happen?
Well, that will be up to Rossland, because Rossland has to, because we are not funded at all to deal with private property or municipalities. So our funding right now is mostly Crown, like Ministry of Transportation, Flynn Row, BC Parks. And so the surveys, and you'll see a lot of the surveys are done along roads, and that's because that's where our funding goes. So it's not throughout the whole area. And so then if municipalities want inventories, then they have to come up with the funds. Warfield got a Columbia Basin Trust ecosystem grant to do their process. And City of Nelson just is including it as part of their operational budget, as far as I know.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Yes, Janice.
I'm sorry, I was just going to ask Lori, I loved your presentation and the handout you sent to all of us. It was really good. When you were talking about Vancouver is collecting a list of bylaws, is that, you mentioned there was a listserv that you could get on with the rest of the municipalities in your presentation. Was
Yes.
that where we would access that to sort of look at it all? And
You could probably just talk to them directly. I could give you their name, but it's also, yeah, there is the listserv for local governments. And so they're encouraging everyone, of course, to join. And I don't know anything about the listserv because I'm not on it and I'm not allowed on it. So I don't know how well it functions or anything, but I have talked to Metro Vancouver. And because they have a regional working group and they're really quite organized. They have a whole bunch of fact sheets that they put up, best management practices. So they're just a really great resource, and they're just ahead because they have a lot, larger funding pot than we do out here. So yeah, I could just send you that information.
oh, that'd be great. Thanks. I see our planner sent out a note and she's already been looking at it. So I don't need to point her in the right direction, do I? Thank you very much, Lori.
She's always on top of it. So I wanted to just point out the readiness assessment and the toolkit were really wonderful things. And I think that'll be really helpful for us. And also the other, just a reminder, there's other opportunities for you and other people in your group to participate in our OCP, as we're gathering input. And I'd really encourage you to continue to contribute there too, because that's really helpful. That's really helpful to us. So I don't see any other questions. So I'm going to thank you for the presentation. And of course, thank you for your ongoing efforts. It's good work. Kind of like bailing in the ocean, but keep it up.
It works. And kudos to Rosalind as being one of our lights.
Good. Thanks so much.
Good evening.
Nice to see you. Okay, so next we have a delegation from the Roslyn Curling Club. I think we're supposed to hear from Zach Nixon. Is Zach with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please share with us your wisdom.
That's a short-lived answer there. Let me just get my video going here. Can you guys see me now?
Yes, we see you.
I'm in the kitchen here. And my presentation, I'm used to Microsoft Teams from work here, so just give me a second here with sharing the screen. Are you guys able to see my screen?
Yes, we are.
Okay, beautiful. So my name is Zach Nixon. I'm a co-treasurer for the Roslyn Curling Society. I've been a curler for about 7 years and on the executive for 5, and I'm currently a Roslyn resident here on First Avenue. My family's been around for 3 generations now. I grew up in the States and moved here, like I said, about 7 years ago, and I've always loved the area. So the general gist of this presentation is just to show what the Curling Society does for the community and also what we're looking from council. So we have a couple pictures here. We have the late Doug on the left-hand side. He was a member of the Roslyn Legion and also the curling executive. Passed away earlier this year. He will be greatly missed. He was a good friend of ours for sure. So our membership is broken down into leagues. Each various league has 4 to 6 member teams. Ladies usually curl on Mondays and they have 45 members. The retirees curl in the daytime on Tuesdays and there's 27 retirees in the league. It was down significantly this year due to COVID. A lot of people stayed home due to the risk of spread. The men's club is the largest out of the group. There are actually 74 members, and they're spread over Tuesday and Thursday nights. And Wednesdays are doubles curling. That's a two-man team, or two-person team, I should say. It's our newest club. We're trying to build it up now, and this is usually when we have our rentals. So anytime that somebody wants to rent the ice for an event, Wednesday night is usually our most open night during the weekday. Friday nights is our mixed league. This is usually couples. It's one of our largest leagues with 58 members and growing. And then we do offer rentals on the weekends, Saturday and Sunday. And the ice is available pretty much anytime when league play is not in session. And if time is of the essence, we can also move league play if there's a large group wanting to rent the establishment. So reinvesting the community. So we just don't go in and curl and have a great time and leave. There's a lot of underlying work that's done by the executors and also volunteers. We hire an ice maker and bartender and custodial services to clean and maintain the rented space. We also do food purchases from local businesses, of course, alcohol, chips, and popcorn and such that we serve for our members. We also host bonspiels for the ladies, men's, retirees, and juniors. We had 2015 Provincial Legion bonspiel here in Rossland, which brought in, I want to say, about 50 or 60 people. We have the largest junior curling program in the West Kootenays, and it's growing. That's one thing we're very proud of. And with our bonspiels, we do bring a lot of visitors from the city. So last bonspiel I was in, 2018-19 season, I think there was 4 teams from outside of the town, Peachland, Grand Forks, a couple from Nelson. They all spent the night here. They went out for dinner, they had drinks, etc. One thing unique about Rossland compared to many other ski towns is we have a curling rink where skiers can come in for spring break. They can bring their families, they can ski during the day, they can snowshoe, they can cross-country ski if they'd like, but not many towns offer a curling rink. There's a lot of people from the States that come in, Spokane, Chicago, California, and we kind of host the rink for them. They come in, they curl, and they say, hey, this is really cool. We've been to Jackson Hole, we've been to Whistler, we've been all over Colorado to ski, but we can't curl there. We can only curl in Rossland. So that's one of the unique things that draws them here. And we do see a spike in drop-in rentals during the spring break season. So that's mid-March, but also around the Christmas break. We do have a lot of Christmas parties that book our lounge and use our curling facilities for private parties. Please stop me if you guys have any questions. So we've done a lot of improvements to the building in the last 20 or 30 years. Unbeknownst to me, this is before my time, but the club was, lounge was renovated in the early 90s. It expanded and doubled the size of the lounge. Also put a couple washrooms up in the upper floor. I don't know if you guys have been there, but before there was only 2 washrooms down below in the lounge. In the 90s, this was $30,000. So I'm assuming with lumber prices now, that would be in excess of probably 100,000, but that is an estimation. 2015, we painted all the lockers down below and put new carpet in the locker room area. That's on the bottom floor. We've also purchased a lot of curling equipment, which is a niche market, so it's quite expensive. Some of the hacks are put in the ice. They're free floating, as in they're not secured to the concrete down below. They're actually sitting in the ice itself. Scrapers and burners to maintain the ice. Scraper blades are sent out twice a year for resharpening in Ontario, and then they are shipped back to us. And also we have a shop vac that we use for cleaning up water after a burn. In the lounge, we have a new cash register, new fridge and stove, an ice machine. They've also installed an ice sound system and a TV that we use for entertainment purposes. And the vast majority of all this work was done by curling club volunteers at no charge to the rink or the city. So our current club operating cost. Our current lease, as you guys know, is $23,000 a year, but that's just to the city. There's also incurred costs on the society that aren't seen from anybody else. Ice maker, bartender, and janitorial salaries are around $16,000. That should be dehumidifier maintenance, not humidifier. To dry the ice surface was around $2,500 a year and a half ago. Also scraper maintenance, as I mentioned before, to sharpen these long blades. We have to ship them off to Ontario and have them sharpened. Insurance, we do have to maintain insurance to maintain the club, and also the executors have a malpractice or physical insurance for our purposes. And then there's various fees, cable, electricity, etc., that we have to pay as well. So in total, it's around $47,000, $48,000, give or take, you know, a couple thousand depending on the year. As I said before, the society is basically run by volunteer hours. So the executives, which consist of myself and 4 others, this past year we were at least 170 hours in meetings and negotiating COVID responses to the city and developing COVID procedures and hanging plastic, and a lot of work and time went into a very short season last year, which is the nature of the beast. We also host Learn to Curl workshops at the beginning of the season, not only to draw new curlers, but to bring people into the society and have a nice society or social event with them. We also do preseason cleaning of the lounge, the ice, and the locker rooms, etc. Maintain, stock the bar, the lounge, ensure the bathrooms are stocked with toiletries and curling supplies. And then at the end of the season, of course, we have to clean everything up. Each of the clubs maintains their own executive as well, and they do all their own draws and schedules, and then they actually pay or rent the ice off the society, and then that covers the cost of everything I mentioned before. And also we organize our own bonspiels and other social events. Something that we're very proud of is our youth curling club. It's one of the largest in the West Kootenays. RSS and the 7 Summit schools both have curling in their physical education programs, and they bring around 20 to 30 kids into our building on Wednesdays during the day, during their lunchtime. Ice time and coaching are all donated by the Roslyn Curling Society. So there is no charge to the kids. Everything is covered by the society as far as costs. We have lighter weight rocks, so the kids are able to throw the rocks down the ice, especially the young ones. And also we have a shortened hack. So basically, instead of throwing the rock the entire distance of the ice, we have a hack that we can install midway. So the young kids who don't have the strength are able to push the rocks down the ice, and they're not worried about being embarrassed about not having the power to throw down the ice. One of our claims to fame, we have the oldest continuously played for curling trophy in British Columbia since 1899, a little before our times. And this trophy sits in our curling club, and you guys can come by and see it anytime you'd like. Some pictures from inside the club and some off-the-cuff kind of things that we are looking for as a society. We're, of course, looking for an extended lease. For the last 8 to 10 years, we've had 1- and 2-year leases. We've saved up some money that we would like to expend for capital projects. One being new carpet in the lounge. It's pretty bad. We'd also like to paint the lounge, redo some of the cabinetry in the kitchen area. If you guys haven't been in there, it's practical, but it's old, it's dated, it needs to be updated. And also the dehumidifier has been on its last leg. We've had to dump a substantial amount of money repairing the dehumidifier in the last 3 to 4 years. So we'd like to help the city out or buy a new system. I've heard the newer ones are a little bit cheaper. The one we have now is a mechanical type device, where the new ones make use of a desiccant. And the society is willing to put up or pony up $25,000 to $30,000 for those upgrades for an extended 5-year amicable lease. Any questions?
Okay, Janice and then Stuart.
Thanks very much for your presentation, Zach.
Thanks.
I think that's more information than council's ever gotten from the curling club in one time at one time. I do have a question. You were very good at laying out all your expenses that the club faces each year, but obviously you've got 227 curlers, you've got 900 private people who came from private rentals, not to mention Bondsfields, and I assume you don't just stock the bar, you also destock the bar. So yeah, if you know, because it's involved with ice, so there's always drinking.
Mhm.
But clearly you obviously have seasonal revenues as well. And it would be very interesting if you're going to continue to lease the facility to actually see a set of books, an audited set of books on your on all your financials, not just your expenses.
Okay. I can take that back to the society. I don't foresee why that'd be an issue.
Thanks.
Okay, great. Stuart.
That was my question exactly. Thanks, Janice.
That was easy. Who
We
else?
didn't even talk about it beforehand, you know.
Any other questions? I have one on the improvements that, and I don't know that you're going to know this, Zach, because it goes back to the 90s, but do you know what proportion of those investments that were made were helped by grant money? Does the Curling Society actively go out and seek grants?
In my tenure, yes, we've actively gone after grants. We went through, I want to say liquor control, but that's not the right acronym.
Gaming? Was it a gaming grant?
It was a gaming grant that we applied for. We were unsuccessful. I think it was for around $50,000.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, I'm not sure. I can ask.
Right. I think there had been, but I'm a little fuzzy on the details anyway. Well, if there's no other questions, thank you for that. I agree with Janice. That was very informative and well laid out. So we really appreciate that information, and we will certainly take a look. I don't, off the top of my head, know when your lease is up for renewal. Is it this year or next year? Is it this year?
September.
September. Okay. Well, your timing is perfect then. So, all right. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Okay, folks, we have minutes of the Sustainability Commission meeting held April 29th for adoption. Anybody want to move that? And Dirk and a seconder. Andy, any comments on that? Comments, questions? Welcome to Michael Kennedy, a new member. Seems great. Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Okay. And then we have the minutes of the regular meeting on May 3rd. Can I get a mover? Andy and Chris, any comments, suggestions, questions? Nope, all in favor? Okay. And then we have the minutes of our special meeting on May 11th, that these be adopted. A mover? Somebody, Janice, Dirk? Any comments on that? All in favor? Okay, great to see that project going forward. Okay, now we're into policies and bylaws. So first is that we reconfirm our permissive tax exemption policy as presented. So no changes there. Get a mover. Chris and Stuart, any comments, any questions? All in favor? Okay, next one up also for reconfirmation is the retaining elements and landscaping features encroachment policy. Mover? Dirk and Janice, comments, questions? All in favor? Okay. Then the policy review for electric transport purchasing plan policy. This again is reconfirmed as presented. Mover, we'll do Terry and Dirk. Any comments, questions? Dirk, question.
Yeah. Do we know how many people have been able to utilize this to get e-bikes or e-cars or e-somethings?
Good question. Staff, is there any response that we know of?
I think it's around 5.
Okay. Okay, that's not bad. We're a small staff, so that's moving in the right direction. So I did notice in the report, it talked about trying to green the municipal fleet, and this policy doesn't really address the fleet, but I sure would love to see us green the fleet. Okay, anything else on this one? Chris, yes, you had your hand up.
Did I see recently that there's some major changes to the CAREP fund, and how's that going to affect it?
Yeah, there are some major changes to that, and that they're doing away with it, but I think they're going to be doing something else. Does staff have any update on that?
Well,
Go ahead.
well, this doesn't affect the employee electric transport purchasing plan.
Right, because that's a loan. That's a loan.
Yeah,
For
that's
other
a
things,
non-interest loan. So, but if you use, you know, a significant portion of the funds for the step code rebate, then, you know, then there's just less money to put towards electrifying the city's own fleet. Then that money just has to come from somewhere else, right?
yeah, yeah. Okay. Let's see. Anything else on this one, or I'll call the question? Yes, call the question. Good. Okay. Okay, now we have the tangible capital asset, and this is that we approve it as amended, just a small change to make a more appropriate threshold for the capital assets. Mover? Chris and Andy, any comments, questions, anything? All in favor? Okay.
I did have one question.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I missed you.
Land is in this, but it seems to be like land with parked buildings and that kind of thing. Is there any way to get, or would that be something separate, but to get things like natural assets, like Jubilee? I mean, it's our land in the land, or do we need something separate for that?
This is just for the purposes of recognizing the asset, tangible assets, and land isn't depreciable. So land isn't included in that, isn't included the same way. And then as for natural assets, that's a different exercise. We would actually have to have some methods of valuation for natural assets before they could be put into the financials. That's a separate, would be a separate issue.
But that was something that was coming up when when we were looking at I think it was in the financial plan, where you started to look at natural assets and the things that we could move towards recognizing those things and valuing them. So maybe that's something that we can work towards in the future.
Yeah, and it would be a separate policy. I would see it as a separate policy.
Yeah, okay.
That would have to be developed, because you need to establish the criteria for valuation.
Right, a bigger issue. Okay, we already voted on that, but if there's any other questions, we can ask them. Sorry, I missed you on that, Dirk. Okay, so here's the recreation facilities user allocation policy, and that's that we approve it as it was amended. So do I have a mover there? Terry and Janice, comments? Terry?
Yeah, this looks a lot more fitting with the needs of the city. I guess I would just have a question for staff, just in terms of are there any challenges that they see with this new format? But I generally like it.
Okay, Christy, Christy's there somewhere, right? I lost her. Oh, there you are. Hello. Yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
You have a challenges implementing this?
I could see it having some issues for minor hockey. They're managing 3 different facilities for a variety of different groups and coaches. But it's, you know, council had that discussion last time, and it is a priority to balance out the youth and the adults. So, it's either going to continue to be a problem for the adults, or it's going to be a bit more of a problem for the youth. Unfortunately, we just can't meet all needs.
Well, the effort to balance, I think, was what council was hoping for, and it seems like it's doing that. Janice, did you have something?
Yeah, just a couple of things. I was just going to ask Christy, the ice times available for adults after 7 p.m. Will they start at 7, or they'll start at the end of any youth time that was booked? That, like the youth booked a time at 6:45, and I know we have to have some flexibility here. Chances are they wouldn't book at 6:45; they'd book at 6 and go to 7:15. So it's just kind of 7-ish.
Yeah, no, I agree. Once we started, once I started answering questions today, I realized I could have been more specific in the policy with that wording. And so if you want to include that in the motion, I can. There is a booking for minor hockey that happens at 6:45. And I included that. I did not include that as one that they would lose. So, obviously we're going to balance out, making sure that things aren't strategically booked 5 minutes before the 7 p.m. mark, but neither the adult nor the youth groups are trying to be malicious to each other. I think everyone will be reasonable. It's just, trying to make it clear that as of 7 p.m., the priority does shift over.
Well, I was going to say too that I think that the allocation policy you've come up with will meet the needs for this year for sure, for the extra adult teams that are looking to get onto their own ice. I've always felt a little bit that our policy and our goals for the arena didn't really align. And the way we measure success for the arena is obviously on cost recovery and on number of Rawson users. And if our policy kind of sets them up to fail to be able to grow that, we're not. So I do really like this realignment. So thanks for your work on that, Christy.
Dirk, you had your hand up, I think. No, you didn't. Okay. Anybody else? Oh, I want to ask one question. I mean, Christy mentioned that we could, if we wanted to, refine the language a little bit. Does anybody want to do that, or do you want to? I mean, this will come back to us, next year for revision and fine tuning. We can leave it like that now, unless somebody has a suggestion they want to add at this time. Everybody good? Okay. Oh, Terry.
Well, I just think the words that gave me comfort, and thanks for that, Christy, is that the priority shifts, so that feels like it leaves some wiggle room for, as we reprioritize, that it gives her some room to maneuver around there a little bit, but captures the intent of what we wanted. So I like it.
Yeah, I like it too. I think there has to be a little flexibility in there, but at least we're getting a little more aligned with our intent. So that's great. Thanks, Christy. I know that was a challenge. A lot of competing needs. Okay, I'm going to call the question. We are approving this as amended. Okay, good work. All right, next up we have the energy efficient building incentive policy, and this is that we adopt it as amended. And this also includes the other part about adding $20,000. We'll do that in one motion unless somebody resists that. Take a mover. Janice moves and a seconder. Andy seconds. Any comments?
I think this is a great piece of work that our planner's done for us, or our planning department has done for us. I'm a bit concerned about the carrot policy, but we do have the money to transfer into this, and it will help, both new builds and also renovations, which we have lots going on. So anything we can do to help reduce the long-term cost of habitation for our residents and reduce our GHGs, I think it's a great incentive program for us to have.
Yeah, for sure. Andy, comments?
Just I just wanted to say the same, basically, as Janice mentioned, that the advantages of it, and likewise concerned about the provincial government's cancellation of the carrot program, and I hope that our letter in opposition, or at least clarification of what they're trying to do, will include our efforts. This is a good example of how valuable that funding has been to us. So with communication with the province, I'm hoping that we'll be able to outline this program that we've developed, just how valuable it is, and that we want to see some other form of funding support coming coming down the pipe in the near future.
Yeah, especially since this absolutely aligns with the with provincial priorities too, you know, so it's like, yeah, it's really important. Okay, no other comments. I'm going to call the question on this one. All in favor? Okay, good. All right, now we've got a couple of things for information, but if you have any questions or comments, just raise your hand. First up, we don't have to adopt this or anything. Annual Recreation Cost Recovery Report, December 2020, for the year of 2020. Another great piece of work that helps us get more information about how our facilities really look, costs and revenues. Any comments, Dirk?
But the usage numbers, is it possible to, I mean, it's hard kind of apples to apples comparisons, like hockey or cycling, the numbers are quite different. And seeing numbers like, 900 users and 227 members for curling, is it possible to get those kinds of numbers in there? They'll seem like significant compared to the columns that are there.
Christy?
Getting analytics on some of this stuff is a deeper, and it's a time consuming and costly thing to do, more than it may seem on the surface. We did, COVID actually helps with that because there's nothing allowed to be drop-in, everything's pre-register. But the problem with those program numbers is that some programs are a series and some are a one-off. So the only other thing I could really do would be to add in, for example, if you've signed up for a cycling series where you have 8 classes, then I could count that as eight things, essentially. And that's the only way that we could really make that apples for apples, because this isn't rentals as far as usage goes. This is programming that you see in the report.
But that seems like a good strategy that would work for hockey, for swimming. If you've signed up for hockey and you're going once a week for, I don't know, 4 months, 5 months, whatever it is, that'd be good apples to apples comparison then.
So for the hockey, just for reference for this year's numbers, the hockey those are per visit. That's total visits. They're not a series. They are drop-in. And then for the women's hockey, that is a series. So that's one that you would see that for each of those women that are counted, that would be, I don't remember the exact number of sessions. Whereas for the drop-in hockey, that is just that's total times. So that could be one person showing up 5 times would count as 5.
Yeah, it seems like it would, to be consistent, have however many times somebody shows up, it gets counted as a visit, as opposed to trying to sort it out between who bought a series and who bought a drop-in, just to, I don't know, but I don't know how you'd really be able to do that. Janice?
I was just going to say, if it's possible, it would just give us a better picture of usage versus, like, total usage versus number of people. And I mean, if it is, as Chrissy says, if it's drop-in, you don't know if it's one person showing up 5 times or 5 people showing up once. You can't. It's too deep to try and get into that, but at least for some of our programming, if we know that we've got 40 kids going for 20 times, we know that, that's how many times they use the per user numbers. So at least we could sort of try and compare that a little better. It'll never be perfect, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, I thought about that and I didn't ask Zach about it, but it's like, he's got the men's club and the doubles club and the MAC, it's like, well, there's probably a bunch of people. That's probably not 227 distinct people. There's probably overlap in there too, but then it doesn't count how many times they all do it. Yes, Christy.
The other thing that won't fairly represent is that we don't count numbers for rentals. Those are rental programs. So that won't necessarily be an accurate depiction either, because when it comes to the arena, we don't run that many internal programs because there's a lot of outside organizations that rent the ice and run their own programs. Whereas with the pool, it's all us, it's all our programming. So it's difficult to pull all those numbers in, and we tried to get deeper into those weeds a couple of years ago when we were trying to justify arena expenditures and such. And you could keep going. There's always arguments on both sides of statistics. They're not, unfortunately, as black and white as we would like.
I was just going to say, Christy, I don't think we need to include all the rentals. We just want to get a good feel for what our uptake is on programming, and if it's growing or shrinking, et cetera, et cetera. I think we're seeing, it'll be interesting to see the census count with how many more kids we have in town, because I'll bet money it's more. And, so it'll be nice to see if we're providing programming that is working for all our new residents.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks. Stu, you took your mute. You're off. There you go. Speak up.
Yeah, I don't find this particularly, I mean, it's some interesting information. I don't find it particularly useful. I'm holding out for the recreation master plan, where we evaluate all these facilities. We roll in capital costs and benefit to the community into a more broad assessment. This is relatively narrow and interesting for what it is, but I don't find it that useful for allocating funding or any other decisions we need to make.
Okay, thanks for that. I think we're just trying to get a handle on starting to gather information that's never been gathered before. So you sort of have to start somewhere for sure.
Some's better than none.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Anything else on this? We're not voting on it. We were just discussing it. I'm going to move on. I need a motion for invoices paid for April. See a mover there, somebody? Okay, Janice, and a seconder, Dirk. Okay, any discussion, any questions or comments on expenditures? No? Okay, all in favor of approval? Okay. All right, now we have another item for information, and I really like this one. I think this is very helpful to keep track of our annual grants. You know, that's been a fairly recent addition to our reporting. Before it was just totally kind of catch as catch can, you know, so I think this is great. Does anybody have any questions or comments on that for staff? Nope. Okay. And now we've got city reports, and I'm just going to read through them. And if anybody has a comment, raise your hand and I'll try and catch you there. So any conversation on the building permit report? How about the building permit inspection by type report? Certainly we are a busy little city. Step code energy rebates, a couple of 3 and 4s coming in. Dirk, you want to speak to that?
Just nice to see some higher numbers in there and attaining what they had planned to attain.
Yeah, for sure. How about bylaw enforcement? Comments? Comment I would make there is that we really need to watch for garbage violations. So if Neil could be directed there, because we're getting comments about bears and tragedies of that sort. How about public? Oh, Andy?
I also note that there seems to be quite a lot of bird feeders still up around town as well.
Yeah, good point.
So
okay.
You know, the bears are obviously enjoy sun.
Yeah, Chris?
The RCMP are active in this as well. I had an employee that had RCMP banging on her door at 1 o'clock in the morning last week because there was a bear in her backyard.
Wow.
You know, woke her up and said, okay, there's a bear in your backyard. Okay, thanks.
Thanks. That's pretty bizarre.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, public works report, water production report, or updated task lists. Anything there? Okay. Okay, so we have a couple of things from correspondence. The unforeseen costs, that was about a call out. That was a letter to mayor and council. And this is no actions required on this. Scott did a really good job of responding to the citizen. And I think, you know, getting that communication was important. The only thing that I would suggest is maybe on that form, the work order form, permission form, I forget what it's called. We could put something on there that says what the charges actually are. I mean, people often in the middle of an emergency, they're not looking at the fine print, but a number might catch their eye, and or you know, something there. I'm just wondering if there's a little bit more information that would, you know, help. So I don't know, Scott, do you want to comment on that idea?
Yeah, we've already been looking into that, to updating also the website. It's very difficult to pinpoint a cost on this, depending on weather, depending on the magnitude of the emergency and such. But yeah, I think more forward education on the matter will give a little bit of light on the subject when, you know, everything is happening really quickly in an emergency, and the more information we can give them beforehand, the better.
Right, but we do have a minimum call out hours, right? And we do know what an hourly rate is for the most part. I mean, even just something kind of general like that. And then also just have the employee, sort of trained employee, to say, and there will be labor charges, or just, I don't know, some other little somethings, because obviously that's a standard policy, but that homeowner was taken by surprise. And I think we could probably reduce that. But Andy, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I think what would be really valuable is to put it all in writing. And if it's just a simple pamphlet or a piece of paper to the homeowner, just so that it's consistent across the staff, because understand we've got a number of staff that are working different shifts, and including the weekends when obviously this situation arose. So something that was in writing that could be handed to the customer or the resident in this case, and would just keep it consistent throughout our staff, throughout our messaging, I think would be a really good idea.
Yeah, I mean, they do sign off on it, right? But they don't sign off with any true idea of what the cost might be. So yeah, anyway, I'm sure Scott will have it under control. Chris.
Just a question as to the actual costs of, $50 for the shut off, $50 for the turn back on. The curb stop is the property of the city. To expose the curb stop is quite a feat for a homeowner who's experiencing a tragic leak. Hopefully not, but even a water leak in their line. If we were to change this or change the look of this and add a little bit of more customer service into it, I would be, as a homeowner, probably pretty. It'll be a little easier on me if I paid, as an example, like $300 for the truck to come to suck up all of everything, the sucker truck to expose the curb stop, and actually have that service part of it. And then when it comes time to turning it back on, have that as part of the $300. And that's just an arbitrary number I threw out, but it seems like that there are a lot of associated costs and ongoing costs with doing something like this. Just a suggestion, but I know that this person isn't the only person that has complained.
Okay, Scott, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, it's just pulling up some numbers. The whole thing is when there's an emergency, we're very clear if it's on our side, we'll pay. If it's on the homeowner's side, it's the homeowner's responsibility. And when we say we pay, we mean, just a reminder, it's the taxpayers' money. So, just looking back on 2019, if I just stand by here. In 2019, in emergency callouts for water and sewer, we're at $6,680, and 2020 was a big year, and that was at $9,800. So there's different ways of doing this. Obviously, there's a standard call out fee. There's a question of how much you want to charge the resident. The one thing that I have to uphold with my operations is the safety of my workers. It's really different in the summer compared to winter. One of the biggest challenges is when we get a call out, it's usually a frantic resident who, wants their water off immediately. We get there, and if it's only one person, it may take another 40, 45 minutes to an hour to get another person out. That's why we need to have two people there. We dig it out, we make sure the water's off, we make sure everything's functional. See, these are all things we can analyze and say there's one set fee or it's actual costs. And usually what municipalities and cities do is actual costs. But if you want to direct me differently, I'm open to yours.
Okay, well, I don't know that we're prepared to direct you differently now, but the policy will come up for review, and maybe we can keep that idea of, if there's a way to improve the customer service on it, and ideas from your experience and talking with your peers, in public works at other municipalities, that might be helpful. Okay, let's see. Staff has a hand up. Is that Brian or Elma?
Yeah, no, it's Brian. Just one more quick question.
Whoever's there with the hand up wants to speak.
Is that a lot of those fees are in our fees and charges bylaw, and we are looking at full cost recovery on that service. So that's how the policy is described. And so we sit down and have a minimal fee would kind of go against what we're looking at trying to do for full cost recovery. And then all the shut-offs for $50 and site visits and other little kind of nuances of the customer service experience that you get from Public Works is outlined fairly clearly in our bylaws, which is why we follow those bylaws. So if that's something we want to look at doing, then we would be looking at changing our user, that's actually in our user fee bylaws. So we would be looking at those line items when that bylaw comes up for 2022 fees and charges, which I think we already have established already, but.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we want to go away from cost recovery. I think what we're really talking about is how we communicate with the customer. Stuart.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think the current system is working great. You know, it's what it costs. We charge them what it costs. I don't think, you know, coming up with some fancy communications plan is going to, you know, change anything, because people aren't going to read it in advance because they only need to use this in an emergency and they haven't been paying attention to that point. Yeah, and then they get stuck with a big bill and they're unhappy. I think that's just the way the world works.
Well, yeah, I agree with you, but I think if that work order permission thing said something like we have a 4-hour call out, the hourly rate is this, then people will have a better idea of the cost.
They're not going to be any happier about paying the money.
No, but they're going to be informed, and I think sometimes information is good. But anyway, I think we can leave it with Scott and see if there's some you know, changes that he sees as best practices out in his world, and see how that goes. So is that good with everybody, or any more comments? Okay, thank you. And now we are moving to members' reports. I'm going to start with Andy because his report was excellent, greatly appreciated it. And does anyone have any questions about it? Or Andy, do you have anything more to add? Janice has a question.
I see Janice's hand up there. Yeah.
Yeah, I did have some questions. Thanks, Andy. It was a great report. The first, I have three. The first was, do you need a letter of support from the city for the North-South Corridor grant application that you're thinking about, or is that sort of down the road still?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that from the regional district perspective, the board said yes to a letter, and I will ask of the board to see if they would like member municipalities to offer support as well for that. Yeah, it was certainly good news to hear that isn't collecting dust, that there are people still intrigued and wanting to move that project forward. So they see it being advantageous to go after it again now. So yeah, I will ask that, Janice, and see what response I get.
Yeah. Well, as you pointed out, it would be lovely to get some of those big trucks out of our downtown area if they had an alternate route.
Sure.
Second question I had was regarding, there were some specific concerns about the economic development in the area, the regional economic development.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wondered if you could expand a little bit about on that. So maybe I can take it back to our own economic task force and share it with them. Yeah,
it came out of a couple of directors' concerns that some of the like it was kind of fractured the way they were going about it, because there's different organizations involved in it. They didn't seem to be collaborating or coordinating. And of course, business community, for example, through Chamber of Commerce, you had to be a member. So that didn't necessarily, that may have precluded some businesses, if you weren't a member, obviously you may not be involved. So you fall through the cracks. So the idea was to put a bug in their ear of the organizations that are looking at LCIC, LCCTS, and Chamber of Commerce, so that they would try and get together and make sure that they were coordinating their efforts. It won't hurt to have our own organization involved. Certainly, again, it's a regional effort. I think is good. Everybody sees the advantage of cross-community communication and coordination. So hopefully that'll go forward. So feel free to share for sure.
Okay.
But again, we haven't got a response. We're waiting for a response back. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of comes out of our inquiry there.
Yeah. Well, please keep me posted so I can share with our
Yeah.
task forces. Part
Will
of our
do.
plan is to go to those organizations and work with them.
Yeah.
But it'd be nice to get a heads up and know what we're getting in.
Yeah.
And then the last question I had is there was a reference to a discussion at UBCM about a 1% wealth tax. And I wondered if you could tell me what's up with that.
Well, our MP came and did a delegation recently and talked about a number of initiatives that are kind of moving on the federal level. And that wealth tax also has been discussed at the provincial level as well. It doesn't necessarily seem to be getting a lot of traction with governing bodies, but with the directors, a couple of the directors thought that it was worth promoting and pursuing with the minister, with ministerial meetings being scheduled now, that there would be a chance to bring the issue up and see if there was the idea of having some traction around it. Again, it was kind of a couple of the directors had expressed interest in seeing something happening there. As we know, there's lots of talk, but not much action.
Okay, anyone else have any questions for Andy on the regional district? Or Andy, is there anything else you want to add to your report? Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay. Chris, how about you?
Thank you. I have nothing to report this week.
Okay, Stuart.
Nothing from me.
All right, Terry.
All quiet here too.
All quiet. Janice.
Not so quiet here. May 4th and 11th, I attended the Economic Development Task Force meeting. So we've completed our first outreach program to local business owners and operators. Next steps include collating the data, my favorite part. Holding some focus groups meetings with different segments of the business community to drill down to their specific comments, and creating a report for council with our findings so far. So that's good. May 6th, I attended a regional call with Ministers Bear and Osborne. Discussion centered mostly around COVID-19 vaccination, rollouts and broadband initiatives for rural and small communities. May 7th, I went to an administration personnel committee meeting. May 8th, I got my vaccination. May 11th, I attended a special meeting at council, as we all did, to finalize the Midtown Transition Project, as there had been a transcription error in the tender report by one of the consultants. May 12th, I went to a Midtown project meeting. Construction start date's been pushed back by 1 week to the 25th. And we're still waiting on approval of an FCM combination grant loan for the Lower Columbia Affordable Housing Society to upgrade the building from step 3 to step 5, which we're hoping will get significantly reduce the operating and rental costs from this initiative. May 13th, I met with Dan Ehler from the EDTF to work through some data from the Thought Exchange platform. And on the 14th, I went for a walk and talk with Mike Kennedy from the EDF, and we just discussed a wide range of community initiatives and opportunities.
Busy. Busy. Andy.
Quick question, Janice, on the potential upgrade of the step code. Would that include the whole building, including the both the housing and the city hall portion?
I think
it's energy efficiency.
Yeah, it's energy efficiency. I believe it's for the whole building, Andy, but it's primarily focused on the housing. Yeah, because that's a larger proportion of the building, of course.
80%. Dirk, thank you, Janice.
Nope, nothing for me this time around.
Okay, well, looks like the girls have been busy. I've got a few things. The call that Janice mentioned, Brian was also on that. That's with Minister Osborne and Minister Bear. So that's Minister of Municipalities and Minister of Citizen Services. And the focus was on interconnectivity. And Minister Bear did announce that 53 new projects around the province are being announced. We asked if there was anyone along Highway 3, and it doesn't look like there is. I'm not even sure anyone along there applied, but anyway, it was interesting. So they're putting a lot of money into that. We've moved our Midtown project committee meetings are going to be once a month with council involvement, but staff and the society are really going to be ramping up as construction gets underway. And as Janice mentioned, the start date's pushed back just a little bit, and the same about the approvals. We haven't yet heard. Both Fortis and FCM could give us some significant help on those energy efficiencies. So we're really feeling positive about that. I participated in the weekly mayor's and IHA vaccination updates, very useful information. They want to encourage everyone 18 and older to register because then they'll be contacted when it's time for them to get their vaccine. And as of the numbers last Thursday, 50% of eligible people in Interior Health have had the shot. And that kind of dovetails with have the first vaccine, that kind of dovetails with provincial numbers, but they are concerned that they're seeing younger people, and by that they mean basically 49 and under, are not signing up as robustly as they would like to see. I did the Whistler Institute, a really interesting panel webinar, and I know Janice wanted to be on it, and unfortunately, the link, I've looked for a while to find my link and found it in my spam. So it was kind of a gong show, but it was moderated by the mayor of Whistler, and they had the main point of it, they had some speakers, but the main point of it was that as the recovery starts to happen within the economy, that we need to build back better in tourism, which means basically not going back to how it was because of the impact on climate change and the greenhouse gas emissions that are just going to basically kill us off. And they also talked a lot about the importance of not having of destination marketing organizations transitioning. They're no longer DMOs, they're destination management organizations, because they want to manage who gets attracted, who gets targeted to come and visit these places. So the really wonderful places in BC don't get loved to death, but that you kind of can spread people out, and that you target, not just, high net worth individuals, but people who share the same values as your community. So there's a bit more of a fit, and that people come and stay for longer. So if they do fly, the cost of their flying in terms of climate impacts is spread out some. Anyway, it was really interesting. I asked if there would be a link to a recording, and I haven't heard back, but I will ask again. And then the last thing about the special meeting that we did all attend, in addition to the transcription error, there was also a change in the interest rate, because the interest rate hasn't been locked in on that project just yet. That has increased a bit. And also there was the inclusion of the property transfer tax, which applies to the housing group, and that may or may not actually continue to be in the project. So the number that went up at that could potentially come down a little bit. So we're hoping that's the case. And Andy, you have your hand up. You have something to say? No?
So just a question about a Midtown project. Do we have a specific staff person or a representative for the city that's working, that'll be a kind of our point person with the project?
Yeah, staff, we've got Stacy, Brian, and Elma have all been quite involved. And then of course, Perry's going to be involved in their regular capacities. Brian, do you want to add something?
Yeah, so we're starting up construction startup project meetings right now. So that is more about doing actual construction. So Scott is going to be our lead on the capital side of things for setting up for signing services, and we're talking about security right now and things like that. So we're going to transition from an Alma and a Stacy. I'll also be involved, and then Scott will be taking point, and we're going to be trying to drive this thing home.
Yeah, great, thanks. Good question, Andy. Okay, so unless anybody has anything else to say, I need a motion that the May 17th, 2021 regular meeting of council be closed pursuant to section 91C, labor relations or other employee relations, and section 91G, litigation or potential litigation affecting the municipality and under the community charter. Do I have a mover? Somebody? Andy and Janice, and I think we're all out. So thank you.